Welcome to another FPL video. This is going to be the best team you can make for Game Week 12. So if you have the free hit, this is ideal for that chip. So let's get straight into the video. So yesterday in the best wildcard team video, I actually showed you the best expected goals figure for all of the clubs at the beginning of that video. And here today, I'm showing you it for the expected goals conceded. So as we can see, no surprises who's at the top: Norwich and Newcastle. Man United pretty much near the top, Leicester and Arsenal as well. And with Arsenal, as I discussed yesterday, it was pretty much because of those first three fixtures where the Gunners were really depleted in terms of injuries and COVID cases, and they were looking so poor at that moment in time. And no surprises, Man City, Liverpool and Chelsea amongst the best. Crystal Palace have the fourth best expected goals conceded figure. Brentford still in the top five, despite obviously kind of tailing off in the last few weeks. Before that, they were actually second behind Man City, but pretty much we're kind of now starting to see who are the best defences, who are the best attacks, and you probably could say a few teams that have a pretty poor XGC figure, like Arsenal, are probably in and amongst the top 5 or 10 defences in the league. So just a bit of an interesting view in there. And now I'm going to be showing you the best team you can make for Game Week 12, and I'm actually going to be breaking down most of the key players. At the time of recording, Frank Lampard hasn't been officially announced as the new Norwich manager, but it looks very likely that he's going to take the helm at the Canaries. That's going to be very interesting, and let's see how he does. That'll be very interesting to see, to be honest. But with McCarthy, any keeper, any player really facing Norwich, you're probably going to be featuring in this team. And I think McCarthy, you could even double up with him and Livramento. Maybe that's a bit too risky. I think Norwich could nick a goal, especially that being Lampard's first game potentially. And if not Lampard, it could be someone else. But McCarthy, I think, can do really well. He's been on a very good run of form recently, and I think he can continue that against Norwich. Then the fixtures get tough, but remember, this is just for Game Week 12, and that's all we care about. And Norwich, as we actually shown in the tables just now and also yesterday, in terms of XG, they're at the bottom, and also in terms of XGC. So they're just a poor team in general. It's going to take a lot of work for them to be up to speed in the Premier League, and I think McCarthy could do pretty well against them. Now, I spoke about him yesterday. It's Gaeta in goal, and obviously you don't have to have both of them once again, and I said this with my wildcard team too. If you don't want to go for two rotating goalkeepers, then just go for Ben Foster in goal. But if you don't go for McCarthy as your keeper to start, then maybe just go for Gaeta, who does face Burnley. I think that Palace, obviously, as we just talked about now, the fourth best in terms of expected goals conceded, and they're keeping clean sheets. They're looking solid, and that's 2 clean sheets in a row for the Spaniard and Patrick Vieira's men. So I think that Gaeta is a good option. Burnley are, I'd say, in decent attacking form, but I'd still go for Gaeta if you don't back McCarthy, at least looking at the kind of cheaper options. Otherwise, if you want to go for an expensive keeper, I'd probably look towards Ederson. I think he's the most likely of the premiums to keep a clean sheet this week. But otherwise, I think it's between Gaeta and McCarthy, and take your pick there and stick with them. Another name that we mentioned yesterday is João Cancelo, and 14 points against United last week. Obviously, he's looking really good at the moment in the Champions League as well. He's getting assists. He's looking like such a threat. He created 10 chances in a single game, and he was rewarded with 3 assists. And we talked about his stats yesterday. His XG, I have to say, very healthy for a defender. Very unlucky for him not to have scored so far this season. Maybe the goal was coming against Everton, but regardless, I'd have at least one Man City player in this team this week, and I think Cancelo is definitely the pick of the bunch. Now, in my opinion, you have to have at least one City defender this week, but I'd actually go for 2, and I'd back the double City defence this week over the double Chelsea. I just think that the citizens have a much higher chance of keeping a clean sheet against Everton, and City's defence have been rock solid, really. Just a bit unfortunate in recent weeks not to really accumulate those clean sheets as they probably deserved. With Diaz, I'm actually looking at his defensive stats, or City's defensive stats, more so than his XG and XA, because they're pretty poor, to be honest, and I don't even think both of them combined, the XG and the XA, total to 1. So you can kind of get an idea of Diaz's attacking threat, but I still think occasionally you can nick a goal or 2 from set pieces, and that, you never know, it could happen this week as well. But with Diaz, it's just that kind of steady 6 to 9 points that he can get. He loves getting bonus points, even more so than Walker and Laporte in most cases. But I would go for Diaz. Of course, if Stone starts, obviously he could actually get some goals like he did last season. He was showing a lot of attacking prowess, but I would still prefer Diaz. He's just that kind of nailed set and forget. And the same goes for a free hit. If you just want someone dependable who can get you some points, I think Diaz is the guy. And looking at the kind of premiums this week, there is Trent against Arsenal. There is Chilwell and James, but I would still go for a double Man City defence against Everton. Despite the tough fixture this week, I still think Chelsea offer great value at the back, and I'd go for at least one of their fullbacks. I wouldn't actually mind having Chilwell and James, but I just think because City are more likely to keep a clean sheet this week, for a free hit or for the best team in Game Week 12, I'd go for double City defence over it, and I'd actually pick Chilwell over Reece James because Alonso, obviously we don't know how long he's out for, but if he is out for Game Week 12, that just cements Chilwell's spot in the starting 11. You would also expect Reece James to start, but I think Chilwell is offering great value as well, and I'd probably just about go for him over Reece James. But, of course, if both of them started, who do you think is going to outscore the other? It's very difficult to say. At this moment in time, James is in better form. Overall, it's very neck and neck since Chilwell has come into the side, but both great options. Pick one and stick to them, and the same goes for a free hit. Now, a lot is kind of subject to his fitness, and he has actually withdrawn from the England under-23 squad, I believe, because of an injury. So let's wait and see what the situation is with Livramento. But if he is fit, I would definitely go for him. He doesn't have to be in your starting 11, especially if you already have McCarthy. Then you can play those three defenders I talked about before, the double City defence, as well as Chilwell. And Livramento can be first on your bench, and of course, he's so dependable. If he is fit, though, you probably would be a bit uneasy benching him because a clean sheet against Norwich isn't out of the cards, and Livramento has that attacking potential, but he's definitely a good choice, and it's kind of a no-brainer around his price bracket. The only kind of headache we have at the moment is his fitness. Now, for a kind of bench fodder option, I'm not really expecting a clean sheet from West Ham against Wolves, but I think Ben Johnson could be a pretty decent fifth option here. And if we actually look at the defensive stats, 2 clean sheets in 5 games, and at one point Ben Johnson was starting in the Europa League. He was getting some clean sheets there as well. West Ham aren't the greatest defensively, and we actually have spoken about this in the last few videos as well, but there's still a decent defensive unit, and Ben Johnson offers exceptional value around 4 million. By the time you probably get him into your team in future weeks, he'll be around 4.2, 4.3 million, and so long as he can stay in that starting 11 ahead of Vladimir Coufal, he's definitely worth the money. I don't think there's much need for an explanation with Salah. I've talked about him yesterday and also all the other videos. He's just a must-have at this point, over 70% ownership. A lot of people are still going to be captaining him despite facing Arsenal. I probably will do the same. Obviously, I'll tell you if I do change anything in terms of the captaincy and my team selection, but he's just a no-brainer. Go for him on a free hit, wildcard, normal team, whatever. And you know what? Let's not overcomplicate the situation. Now, something that's a bit more complicated is the kind of matter between Heung-min Son and Harry Kane, and I discussed this in detail yesterday in the best wildcard team video. Now, it's a difficult situation. I still prefer Son over Kane, and I spoke about this. The reason why I'd actually go for Kane on a wildcard is because he's a nice placeholder for a Cristiano Ronaldo and other premium strikers like Lukaku when he's back. With Heung-min Son, you don't have to go for him because you have Salah, you've got Jota now, who, you know, could be the pretty much nailed starting striker with Firmino injured. Then you have Foden, Gallagher, Smith-Rowe. There's so many other options. In the attack, there's not too many, if we're being honest. And we compared Son and Kane's stats. They're very similar, especially in recent weeks. But for a free hit team, and I'll be obviously discussing why exactly I haven't gone with Kane here, and I've gone for Son instead, but I just think it makes perfect sense on a free hit to go for Heung-min Son. Unfortunately, we just don't have unlimited budget. Maybe I'm being a bit too negative with Everton, but I think a triple up with City against them is on the cards. And if you don't fancy a double up in defence, for example, another player I would recommend is Gabriel Jesus. I think he could do really well against Everton, but Foden, obviously I've been speaking about him a lot over the last few videos and streams. He's just an exceptional player, and he's been very unlucky not to register a goal or an assist in the last 2 appearances, and he's just on another level at the moment. And for me, he's a no-brainer. And even on a best free hit team, I know we've got a lot of options this week, but I'd still go for Phil Foden. I think around his price bracket, he's simply just the best. Speaking of the best around his price range, it's Gallagher for sure, especially with that fixture against Burnley. You have Smith Rowe, who's probably the kind of closest to his level around that price range. He's facing Liverpool, so it's an easy decision. If you want a kind of cheap midfielder, go for Gallagher. I know Mbeumo's facing Newcastle, but just hasn't really shown enough form or kind of signs for me to back him over Conor Gallagher, the Chelsea loanee. And I think he's an exceptional player at the moment, and a bit unfortunate not to be called up for England, but still, we talked about the stats in detail. I think he's a great pick against Burnley, who, to be fair, have improved in recent weeks, and they could prove to be a tough test for Palace, but Gallagher for me is still a great option on paper. Now, the main reason why I haven't gone for Kane in this best free hit team for Game Week 12 is because of Cristiano Ronaldo. I think having both of them up front, it will pretty much heavily deplete your midfield or defence. So it's best to kind of stick to one of them. You can cover Spurs with Heung-min Son and then have Cristiano Ronaldo. The other way you can go about it is having Bruno Fernandes and Harry Kane, but I probably prefer the combination of Ronaldo and Son, to be honest. And Ronaldo, despite being in a pretty poor United team, he's been so clutch for them. He's scoring important goals, the equalisers, the winners, the goals to actually kick off the game and put United into the lead. And of course, we all know about his quality. He's one of the best players of all time. And look at his stats. Obviously, in 8 games, 4 goals and an assist. Pretty poor by Ronaldo standards, but you know, we shouldn't use that to kind of belittle him or his achievements, of course. And he's got some healthy XG figures, XA. He's taken a lot of shots and still up there for the most shots taken since he's come into the league and started in Game Week 4. And I think against Watford, I know they've been better recently under Ranieri. They're still vulnerable defensively. They probably should have conceded more goals to Arsenal. Ben Foster had an amazing performance on his 500th Premier League game. So I would go for Cristiano Ronaldo. I think that United will get 2 or 3 goals, and the Portuguese international, the all-time international record goal scorer, will do the business. And finally, to complete this team, we have Mikel Antonio. West Ham and Antonio love playing against Wolves, and I think he could do well against them. And I know Wolves have been very impressive recently, and they actually were the kind of most informed team before Game Week 11, but I think Antonio and West Ham will just have too much for them and Bruno Laga's side. And Antonio, obviously his stats are still thoroughly impressive despite a kind of dip in form in recent weeks, but for me, he's still the best around his price and a great option. I'm happy to keep him for this week. I know he's got some tough fixtures coming up like Man City and Chelsea, but for Game Week 12, he is one of the best options for sure. Now, I mentioned him, obviously, Harry Kane. It's difficult to kind of go without him when he's facing Leeds. I think he could actually go crazy here and get his second double-digit return of the season like he did against Newcastle and maybe kickstart, you know, a kind of resurgence this season. I think Kane is capable of that, of course. Leeds is a very good fixture to kind of start that. And another kind of honourable mention is Callum Wilson, even Ivan Toney. I think they could all do very well this week, but Harry Kane, of course, is the kind of main absentee from this list. Unfortunately, I just can't get him in. Let me know what you would do to kind of facilitate Harry Kane in the side. Would you drop Ronaldo, Foden, Son? What would you do? The kind of budget that I'm working with is 103.9 million, so that's why I'm not able to kind of afford all of these players. But Harry Kane is a really good player, of course. Still some decent stats, especially in the last few game weeks. He just needs to get that goal, and I think that would just fill him with confidence. And I think under Conte will be, at least for the time being, slightly motivated to, you know, finish his career at Spurs strongly and then maybe kick on in the future. Now, I know that I said Harry Kane is the biggest absentee, and definitely that's the case on paper, but I think Jarrod Bowen against Wolves can go crazy, and he could be the main West Ham attacker, not just for Game Week 12, but beyond. I think he's the one you want to go for, and he's actually scored against Wolves in the past. I think he can do so once again. His stats are absolutely crazy. I've decided to actually show the stats from Game Week 5 onwards, and he's on a little bit of a run since then. He's only blanked once since Game Week 5, and that was against Tottenham, and Bowen has just been absolutely consistent, racking up those goals and assists. Not too many goals, to be fair, and his XG does suggest a slight underperformance, to be honest. I think there will be more goals to come. Of course, that's never always the case, you know. Good stats, they don't always translate to points, but Bowen has the stats, he's got the eye test, and just general good performances. He's looking like a really good option, and since Game Week 8, actually, he's the only player, bar Salah of course, to have more than 1.5 XG and 1.5 expected assists. So of course Bowen at the moment is looking like one of the best options around 6 million, and he's definitely someone I would recommend. And even for the free hit, if you don't want to go for Antonio, you could actually go for Toney up front and then maybe Bowen in the midfield. So of course, he is definitely someone I would love to include in the best free hit team, and maybe he should be in there, maybe ahead of Foden or someone else. But of course, if you can find a way of squeezing Bowen in, I'd thoroughly recommend it, and not just for Game Week 12 like I said, but even on your wild card or just for a long-term purchase. So this is how the team looks like overall. So we've got McCarthy and Gaeta. Once again, you don't have to go for both of them, especially on a free hit. It doesn't really make too much sense to have just both of them. I'm just showcasing to all of you that those are the two best keepers this week, at least around their price range. And then in the defence, I would probably start Chilwell, Diaz, and Cancelo, but you could also go with Livramento if he is fit. Of course, it'd be very, I'd say, well, just very nerve-wracking to bench him. And I know he's only 4.5 million and he started at 4, but he's just absolutely exceptional this season, Tino Livramento. And for the midfield, I'd start Heung-min Son, Gallagher, Salah, and Foden. Norman, once again, just like with the best wildcard team, he's just kind of that fifth bench fodder option on the midfield. And he's not going to get you too many goals or assists. No one around that price range will. But I think he could do a pretty decent job. And maybe he can nick a goal under Lampard in his first game. And then up front, we've got Ronaldo and Mikel Antonio. Keenan Davis is just there as a bench fodder option, obviously. If you want to kind of go differently, you can downgrade one of those midfielders or defenders. And then up front, you can go for an Ivan Toney or a Callum Wilson. Take your pick there. But in terms of the budget we have, I think this is the best team you can make. Of course, once again, if you need that extra bit of money and there's someone else you want to go for, then what I would consider in your situation is just downgrading one of those goalkeepers, for example, and playing around with a few other options. And that wraps things up. Let me know what you would change, like I said before, with this team. It's not perfect, and obviously my budget does kind of limit me in certain areas. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here. Very much appreciate all the support over the last few weeks and months, of course. As always, I'll be trying to do a stream very soon, and also more videos come into the channel, including the preview. So let me know what you want answered or kind of covered in that video in the comment section down below, and that can include comparisons, just questions in general, and much more. And also I'll be looking to do a kind of transfers video, so kind of a buy, hold, sell. Let me know what you want, and if you have any ideas for that sort of video. Thank you very much for all the feedback. I've been reading all your comments and trying to take on board ways to improve the channel, and it's very much appreciated. Good luck with Game Week 12. Enjoy the international break as always, and I'll see you next time.